Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Career Pivots and Second Acts Summit. It's the ultimate telesummit for mid-career transitions. It's my honor to introduce you all to Kolby Goodman. Now, Cobie is a certified career coach, and he's led the Job Hunter for nearly 6 years. He specializes in helping professionals who are struggling create eye-catching resumes, craft, memorable interview answers, establish a professional LinkedIn profile, and explore opportunities in their personal and professional networks. His clients have been able to land higher paying jobs in much more interesting fields and actually get the kind of work-life balance that they desire. So again, Cobie, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me today.
All right. So why don't you, I introduced you, but
Sure.
go ahead and just dive in to some of the questions that we have. So today we're going to be talking specifically about how mid-career professional transitioners can be more prepared as it relates specifically to the resume writing and cover letter process.
Sure.
It seems daunting for folks who have been out of the game for a long time. So with that said, how do you think mid-career professionals who are transitioning careers or jobs should approach the whole resume writing, cover letter writing process? Is there a different way that they should be approaching this? And if so, what does that look like?
Sure. So in my opinion, the mid-career transitioners, they're they have an abundance of experience, right? It's almost too much, so much so that you can't put it all on the resume.
Yeah.
And the problem is that kind of distilling that all down into something that is manageable, that isn't, I don't want you to hand over a small novel as your resume to your next employer because it just won't get read.
Right.
So what I encourage my clients to do and all the career transitioners out there to do is to start actively collecting feedback and taking kind of notes about what they're doing on a regular basis. Because what I find is that the problem is that these people, they've done a lot, they just can't remember, right? When you've been in the job for 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
everything kind of starts to get really muddy and murky and kind of all kind of meld
Yeah.
together.
Totally.
And so when you go to write your resume, um, it's writer's block, right? It's this huge kind of there's a the funnel is plugged, honestly. And so what I encourage my clients to do is on a weekly basis, I normally recommend Fridays right after lunch, take 5 minutes and kind of write a little bit of a work journal. So I recommend writing an email to yourself with 5 things that went well that week at work and 5 lessons or 5 things that went awful at work that week. Because then you start to collect this kind of these consistent stories throughout your time.
Mm-hmm.
Some that are great for the resume and the cover letter to tell those nice stories, and also great for the interview, right? And beyond that, I think too, you need to understand as a mid-career transitioner, as you've gotten this routine, as things have gotten normalized and kind of habitual, is that you need to kind of take yourself out of it and understand, okay, what is your value? Not what do you do, not who do you do it for, but what are the benefits of those around you from you being an expert in those specific things, right? So that could be your boss, your coworkers, your direct employees, all the way up the ladder and all the way out into your clients, right? Because really how you're being judged in the eyes of your next employer is what value are you bringing compared to everybody else in that massive stack of resumes? And you're not going to get the edge. You're not going to get the advantage if all you're doing is writing a resume that's simply a laundry list of your actions and responsibilities.
Right. That's incredibly helpful and actually really actionable and practical, and that's something that somebody can put into play immediately. It seems really simple, but I know that folks are definitely not
Sure.
thinking about that. Would you suggest that folks actually look back at performance reviews and kind of try to extract trends?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, performance reviews are a great place for that because it's this annual journal. And actually, funny enough, I started doing this practice, kind of the weekly work journal, back when I was in corporate America as an IT manager, because after a couple of not so great annual reviews, I realized that my issue wasn't my performance, is that I just couldn't remember what the heck went on for the past year. It's hard. Like I'm a kind of guy that can't remember what he had for lunch last week.
Mhm.
Right? I can remember that jingle from that cartoon when I was a kid. Like I think a lot of our brains kind of work that way.
Yeah.
Uh, we tend to prioritize things that really aren't that important.
Right.
And
Right.
so this was a way for me to easily and quickly get it out of my head and onto the page so that I could come back to it to use it in my advantage. Right. So that's one. So yes. So the performance evaluations are one thing. And then two, go to the people around you.
Mhm.
I think the most powerful question in the workplace is, how can I help you? Right. And so whether that's to your boss, again, to your coworkers or to your direct reports, actively go to these people directly one-on-one and say, cool, like what are you struggling with and how can I help you? Because then that gives you value in the eyes of that person. And then you can follow up that question with, awesome, like I'll make sure to do those things moving forward. But can you help me understand how I've helped you in the past? And those things will help kind of trigger those memories for you as well. And it'll also be good, again, it'll be good content for your resume, cover letter, and your interview, because you can say literally, actually that's a great question, potential employer. Let me tell you the story about, how I helped this person just last week when they asked me for help.
Right.
Right. Because I think a lot of the times in our jobs, we tend to kind of we think very short term and we think very immediate, and we think very selfishly just because it's kind of a dog eat dog world out there sometimes. And so if you can lift your head up a bit from your laptop and from your work and go around and figure out how you can help, I think it gives you the advantage leaving that company, but it also gives you value inside of it, so that maybe you get a promotion, maybe you get a raise, maybe you get that recognition, for going really above and beyond, which doesn't take a heck of a lot of effort.
Right. Awesome. I love the fact that, we're helping folks with multiple ideas around how you could do that. From the work journal to kind of looking at performance reviews to asking people, how can I help you? And then kind of tracking the dates around how have I helped you,
Mhm.
which is going to be really focused. And I imagine very nuanced and really powerful language that would be really hard for folks to come up with on their own.
Yeah, exactly.
So this definitely makes it a lot easier to start than folks realize. Um,
Sure.
so for people who've been, moving up the career ladder for 20 years, they're now realizing I hate my job or I want a new career. I've outgrown this container and they're wanting to move on and they're trying to write their resume. What do you, from your perspective and given your experience, what do you feel are some of the common mistakes
Mhm.
that folks are making as they go to begin to write resumes and cover letters that's typical of mid-career transitioners?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, people, mid-career transitioners, people who are, of an advanced generation, they're relying back to how they applied for jobs 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. So
Mhm.
not understanding how everything has evolved. I think the tip of that spear is going to be the applicant tracking system, which is the software that is scanning and evaluating your resume for keywords, key phrases, special elements that then allow you to get passed on to the human audience. If you're not customizing your resume, if you're not being aware of of what the computer is looking for in your resume, then you're not getting seen by a human being ever. So that's probably number one. And the
Mhm.
second one is, as they write it, these professionals, what I found is that the resume isn't written for the next manager, it's written for the person it's about. And the problem
Mhm.
with that is that you're you're writing this document, but you know how the story goes, right? You're the main character, you're the author. And so there's a lot of things in there that get kind of murky and don't are not communicated effectively. And so you have to make sure, okay, if I covered up my name on this piece of paper and I read everything, would it make total sense? Would I get total clarity about what's coming out of here, both on the sense of what is the expertise, what is the experience, and what are the skill sets? But also to the other side of that is, okay, what are the benefits of those three things? What are the outcomes? What are the impacts? And what are the achievements that this person has been able to make? Right? Because that's how you're being evaluated, right? I guess I can sum it up in saying, when you write your own resume, you have to be totally cognizant of the audience, and the audience is not you.
Mhm. Awesome. And really helpful reminder for folks to bear in mind the computerized portion of this, which will only, I imagine, increase in complexity,
Mhm.
right? Or the involvement of that layer may
Yeah,
only
absolutely.
expand, um, for better or worse, right? um, so, and when you think about the specific needs of a mid-career transitioner, what kind of help and support do you feel like they need, given what you've seen?
Sure. So I think the number one thing is an outside perspective, right? Because
Mhm.
if you've been in your own, we've all been in our own heads for our entire lives,
Yeah.
right? And especially if you're in your own head at your job for a long time, the things you've lost perspective on what's happening, right? And I think that's what happens a lot of time to my clients is that, they feel like, Colby, all of a sudden I woke up one day and I was done. I was done being taken advantage of. I was done answering emails at 3 a.m. I was done never living up to the expectations of management, even though those expectations were never clear. But what I can tell you is that that's probably been the case for way longer than you want to admit,
Yeah.
right? And so the key is to kind of remove yourself from that and get a real perspective. So we talked about earlier, like getting perspective from the people around you, right? How have you helped? How are you adding value? I think getting perspective from outside professionals like you and me, who are there to help give a, a lens at which you should look at your own history and this process in a way that empowers you, right? Because ultimately, what I can tell you is that this process, it can be really isolating, right? Because you want out really, really bad and you're trying really, really hard. But every day you're reminded of the stuff that you have to go through. You have to show up every day. You got to put a smile on your face. You got to pretend. And it almost makes it that much harder, right? So as long as you're, you know, engaging with the outside world and getting away from the keyboard, I think people get really heads down in their laptops and their computers when it comes to this process.
Mhm.
So it's that perspective. I think, well, I've seen it firsthand that a lot of times people come out of these really bad cultures and they feel like they're bogged down. They come out with a really low self-esteem. They start to believe the hype, right? And what I say is that the problem isn't with the product. It's not with the professional, right? The
Mhm.
problem is with the marketing, whether that's the resume or the cover letter or the LinkedIn or the interviewing. So I have to, I get to remind these people of the value and the worth that they bring. And I think sometimes it takes somebody who isn't obligated to them in a way, such at home or other, to say, hey, like, this is what you're telling me, this is what I'm reading, and this is the value I know you can provide, and to get that reassurance.
Right.
Right. So I think that going about this process alone, I think is the number one mistake people make because you don't have to. There are so many resources. There's the telesummit. It's people like you and I. It's people who love and care for them around them in their lives right now. That to
Mhm.
go through this process alone ultimately is more detrimental. And what I've seen is people go about it alone, fail miserably, and then kind of succumb to their own circumstance and be even more miserable at work for the next 1 to 4 years.
Right. And Kobe, what I would add too is sometimes in that frustrating place, people may transition to something else, but something that's mediocre.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
They may leave the toxic situation because it's just so toxic. And I believe our tolerance for suffering is too high in general.
Sure. Absolutely.
What happens with these jobs that are so toxic is people do stay longer than they need to.
Well, and so I kind of, for me, there's two ways about that. So, like, about the people who leave in a haste and like take anything, right? I
Yeah.
really believe the motivation towards is way more powerful and way more sustainable than the motivation away. Meaning, I know a lot of people tend to start this process because of a bad day at work or a bad review or, a crazy customer or a crazy boss. And that's a good way to start. But if all you're doing is looking to escape, I kind of give it the analogy of like running backwards, right? Like you're eventually going to hit something, but you don't know what it is until it's too late, right?
Mhm.
So that would be my number one. And number two is, um, I think if you don't go about this process effectively, you start to get Stockholm Syndrome. Have you heard of that term before?
I have, but
Sure. Let me remind you. Yeah. Stockholm Syndrome happened. It's happened in hostage situations where the hostage themselves actually falls in love with the hostage taker. And
Mhm.
what I have seen time to time too is people who get into their toxic culture, their toxic workplace. They try to escape. That escape fails. And so they justify why they're staying. They're giving themselves these kind of false pretenses of, well, actually, I wanted to stay. Like, this isn't as bad as I thought. And you start to justify all the things that don't resonate with you in your workplace. And ultimately, in the end, it makes you that much more unhappy. And so I think you have to be really aware of making sure that you're putting yourself out there effectively so you can make the transition so that you can be happier at work, you can be happier at home, your wallet doesn't have to suffer as much. And kind of like we said earlier, like, the great thing is that in this day and age, there are so many resources and websites and people who want to see these professionals succeed that, in my opinion, there's not really much of an excuse to not go out there and take advantage of it.
Right. You know, needing help and getting the help that you need is so crucial, and particularly when you're coming off of, unfortunately, what can be a traumatic experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even more crucial for you to dissect between the high emotions and what is true. And it can
Hmm.
be really hard to do that when you're coming from a really toxic workplace and when you're under trauma of that. It's really hard to sift through who you are after that.
Sure.
And so I feel like all the tactics that you are suggesting and what we are promoting in terms of getting the help that you need is so crucial. Maybe, to me, from my perspective, even more crucial as a mid-career transitioner than even entry level. Although entry level
Sure.
is when most people go after help. But the truth is, after this kind of a traumatic scenario, there's an extra layer of work that has to happen there to restore you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this process is a mental, a physical, and an emotional one,
Yeah.
right? And all those ducks have to line up in a row in order for you to go get the job that you want, right? Because nobody's going to hire somebody else who is looking in for pity, or looking to get fixed. You kind of have to come whole. Um, it's
Yes.
kind of, I've been doing this a long time, and I know you have too. And the best analogy I can apply to this process is dating. And
Mhm.
I think a healthy relationship is built on two people who are self-assured and want to add value into the world. A toxic relationship comes when people are codependent and get clingy, and who need that self-assurance in order to survive. And so, if
Mhm.
your next job, if you're looking for that to fix you, you're probably either not going to get it, or you're going to get something that's going to make you worse off.
Yeah. So, folks, Kobe has dropped all of these gems on us in terms of how you can begin to start working on this process to ensure that you are approaching your resume writing from a place of strength, even if you've been battered for 20 years in a really toxic environment, and that is possible. And it's really that much more easy to do if you're seeking objective help from a professional to help you do that, to help you see what you can't see and guide you through a process that allows you to extract all the data that you need and really look at all the trends and question your own assumptions, challenge your own assumptions rather. So, Kobe, so folks who are looking to learn more about your work and what you do or what you may be offering, how can they find you? And folks, this will all be in the interview notes, so you don't have to um, write furiously, but
Sure.
go ahead and tell us anyhow.
Yeah. So my website is thejobhunter.com, THEHUNTR.com.
Mhm.
And then, actually, no, I misspelled my own website. That's embarrassing. Let me try that again.
Fine, go for it.
So my website is thejobhunter.com, THEJOBHUNTR, thejobhunter.com. You can
Mhm.
look me up at on LinkedIn. My name's just Colby Goodman, Kolby, last name Goodman. Those will be the two plus places to find me if you need some help kind of making this transition. If you need that outside perspective, I am happily here to give it to you. I've been doing this for a long time, helping professionals from all around the world, from all different walks of life. I truly love what I do, and I love the opportunity to share this kind of wisdom and advice, I guess. I don't want to give myself too much credit, but what I know is that there are two people out there who are doing work that doesn't resonate with them, that doesn't pay them enough and doesn't allow them to live the life they want to do. And I want to correct all of those things, and that's why I'm here today, and that's why I've started my company. So, Tejan, I want to first of all appreciate you inviting me into this awesome event coming up here in the next few weeks. So I'll see all you viewers and listeners out there during the TeleSummit here shortly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks again, Cobie, so much. And folks, you can find all the information related to where you can learn more about Cobie's work and what he has to offer in the interview notes. Again, thank you so much for your time. These are practical, tactical tips and actionable strategies that you can implement right away. And we're linking you to where you can get the support you need right away. You certainly don't have to suffer alone or try to go through this arduous process without the objective eyes and kind of gentle guidance that you need, especially when you're talking about restoring folks back from what was really traumatic in many cases for some people. So with that, we'll end this particular interview. Again, thanks, Cobie, and take care, everyone. Bye.